It began not in the grand halls of power, nor with the clamour of a revolution. Instead, the idea for what would become the Empowerment and Opportunity Act started much smaller. It was a flicker in the minds of a few ordinary people who saw a persistent gap. They observed a world brimming with potential, yet so many were unable to reach it. They noticed the subtle, almost invisible barriers that kept individuals from acquiring the fundamental skills needed to thrive in a rapidly changing economy. These weren't just job skills, they were life skills, the kind that build confidence and open doors. The world was moving fast. Technology was reshaping industries overnight. Yet education and training systems often lagged, stuck in old models. Many people felt left behind, not because of a lack of ambition, but due to a lack of access. Access to affordable learning, access to mentors, access to a clear path forward. The founders of this idea saw this disconnect not as a failing of individuals, but as a systemic challenge. It was a quiet crisis, one that didn't always make headlines, but eroded human potential daily. They asked a simple question: what if everyone had a fair chance to learn and adapt continuously? This question was the seed. It was a deceptively simple query, but it held the power for profound transformation. The initial conversations were informal, often over coffee or in community centres. They spoke of creating a universal platform, a safety net for skills, ensuring that no one was too old, too poor, or too isolated to learn something new. The aim was not just employment, but empowerment. It was about equipping people with the tools to navigate uncertainty, to pursue their passions, and to contribute meaningfully to their communities. This vision was the quiet hum beneath the noise of everyday life, a persistent belief in a better way. The beauty of the initial concept lay in its inherent fairness and its broad applicability. It wasn't about picking winners or losers in specific industries. Instead, it was about building a foundational layer of capability across the entire population. The thinking was that a society where everyone has the opportunity to develop their skills is a stronger, more resilient and more innovative society. The challenge, of course, would be turning this elegant, humane idea into a tangible reality, into a piece of legislation that could navigate the complexities of the political world and deliver on its promise. An idea, no matter how brilliant, needs champions to breathe life into it. The Empowerment and Opportunity Act found its first crucial advocates not in seasoned politicians, but in community leaders, educators and everyday citizens who had witnessed the need firsthand. There was Miss Anya Sharma, a retired teacher who had seen countless bright students stumble after graduation due to a lack of practical skills. There was Mr. David Chen, a small business owner who struggled to find employees with the foundational abilities his company required. These were the connectors, the mavens, the salespeople for this nascent concept. They began by sharing stories. Not abstract data, but personal narratives of struggle and untapped potential. They talked about the single mother trying to upskill between jobs, the factory worker whose role was becoming obsolete, the young person unsure of their next step. These stories resonated deeply, cutting through the usual political discourse. They painted a vivid picture of what was at stake and what could be gained. The initial group was small, but their conviction was infectious. They organized small meetings, wrote letters, and used local forums to spread the word, slowly building a coalition of the concerned. One of the earliest challenges was simply getting people to believe such a comprehensive bill was possible. Skepticism was a constant companion. It's too ambitious, some would say, too expensive, others would argue. It'll never get through the system. But the early advocates countered this with unwavering optimism and a clear, compelling vision. They emphasized the long-term benefits, reduced unemployment, increased innovation, a more engaged citizenry, and a stronger overall economy. They framed it not as an expense, but as an investment in the nation's most valuable asset, its people. Slowly, a network began to form. Academics offered research to support the bill's premises. Tech entrepreneurs saw the potential for innovative delivery platforms for the proposed skills training. Grassroots organizations pledged their support for mobilization. It was a diverse, almost unlikely alliance united by a common belief in the bill's transformative power. These first believers were the crucial spark plugs, igniting the engine of change and proving that a dedicated few, armed with a powerful idea, could indeed begin to shift the landscape of possibility for many. With a growing base of support, the next crucial step was translating the vision into the precise language of legislation. This was where the idea met the rigorous demands of legal and policy frameworks. A dedicated working group was formed comprising legal experts, economists, educators, and representatives from community groups. Their task was monumental: to craft a bill that was comprehensive yet flexible, ambitious yet practical. They spent countless hours debating clauses, refining definitions, and considering potential unintended consequences. The goal was to create a blueprint for empowerment. The core tenets of the Empowerment and Opportunity Act were centered around three pillars: universal access, personalized learning pathways, and continuous support. Universal access meant that basic skills training, digital literacy, financial literacy, critical thinking, communication, and foundational vocational skills would be freely available to all adults, regardless of their current employment status or educational background. Personalized learning pathways acknowledged that one size does not fit all. Individuals would be able to tailor their learning journey based on their goals and aptitudes, with guidance and mentorship provided. Crafting this blueprint involved intense collaboration and inevitably some compromises. For instance, there were debates about the scope of foundational vocational skills, which industries to prioritize, how to ensure quality control across diverse training providers. There were also discussions about the funding mechanism, how to make it sustainable without placing an undue burden on taxpayers. The drafters looked at successful models from other countries and innovative pilot programs, adapting the best ideas to fit their national context. The process was iterative, with multiple drafts circulated and refined based on feedback from a widening circle of stakeholders. The beauty of the bill began to emerge in its thoughtful design. It wasn't just about throwing money at a problem, it was about creating a cohesive ecosystem for lifelong learning. It included provisions for childcare support and transportation stipends to remove common barriers to participation. It emphasized partnerships between public institutions, private training providers, and employers to ensure the skills being taught were relevant to the job market. The drafting process was a testament to collaborative problem-solving, transforming a passionate idea into a carefully constructed plan for a more skilled and equitable future for all citizens. No transformative idea sails through unopposed, and the Empowerment and Opportunity Act was no exception. As the draft bill began to circulate more widely and gain media attention, the whispers of doubt grew into a chorus of resistance. The first wave of opposition came from established institutions that felt threatened by the proposed changes. Some private training companies, accustomed to a different business model, worried about the impact of free, government-supported alternatives. They argued that it could stifle competition and lower the quality of training available in the marketplace. Then came the fiscal conservatives, who raised concerns about the bill's projected costs. Where will the money come from was a question repeatedly posed in committee hearings and public debates. They argued that such a large-scale public investment was unsustainable, especially given other pressing national priorities. Detailed economic models projecting long-term returns on investment, such as increased tax revenue from higher employment and reduced welfare costs, were presented. But skepticism remained deeply entrenched in certain political quarters. The sheer scale of the ambition was, for some, its biggest perceived weakness. Beyond the direct political and commercial opposition, there was also a current of public inertia and misunderstanding. Some people struggled to grasp the full scope of the bill, seeing it perhaps as just another government program. Others, jaded by past unfulfilled promises, were wary of its grand claims. Misinformation began to circulate, with critics exaggerating the costs or misrepresenting the bill's intentions, suggesting it was an attempt at social engineering or an inefficient use of public funds. Overcoming this required a persistent and patient communication effort, breaking down the complexities into relatable benefits. The journey through these early hurdles was a sobering experience for the bill's proponents. It tested their resolve and forced them to refine their arguments, to gather more evidence, and to build even broader coalitions. They learned that a beautiful idea, clearly articulated, was not enough on its own. It needed to be defended, explained, and championed relentlessly against the inevitable headwinds of doubt. Vested interests and the simple human resistance to large-scale change. The chill of this resistance, however, only served to strengthen their determination to see the bill through to its eventual hard-won passage. Section 5. Through the political gauntlet, a test of wills. Once formally introduced into the legislative process, the Empowerment and Opportunity Act entered its most challenging phase, the political gauntlet. This was a world of committee hearings, amendments, lobbying, and intense partisan debate. The bill's journey was not a straight line, but a twisting path filled with moments where its survival seemed uncertain. Each stage presented new obstacles and required different strategies. The initial committee reviews were grueling, with members scrutinizing every clause, questioning every assumption, and proposing a multitude of changes. The bill's champions, a dedicated group of legislators who had embraced its vision, worked tirelessly. They spent long hours in negotiations, seeking common ground with skeptics and trying to build bipartisan support. They understood that to pass a bill of this magnitude, they needed more than just a simple majority. They needed a broad consensus that transcended political divides. This meant being willing to compromise on certain aspects, carefully considering amendments that could strengthen the bill or address legitimate concerns without sacrificing its core principles of universal access and opportunity for all. Lobbyists on both sides were active. Those opposed to the bill, representing certain established interests, worked to highlight its perceived flaws and potential negative impacts. They argued for significant alterations or even for the bill to be shelved entirely. On the other side, the coalition of supporters, educators, community groups, business leaders who saw the long-term benefits ramped up their advocacy. They organized grassroots campaigns, encouraging citizens to contact their representatives, share their personal stories, and voice their support for the transformative potential of the proposed legislation. There were several near-death experiences for the bill, moments when a key committee vote seemed lost or when a powerful political figure voiced strong opposition. During these times, the resilience of the bill's core advocates was truly tested. They regrouped, re-strategized, and redoubled their efforts. They made passionate speeches, presented compelling evidence, and appealed to the better angels of their colleagues. It was a true test of wills, a high-stakes battle of ideas and influence where the future of widespread skill enhancement hung precariously in the balance, day after day. Section 6. The Unforeseen Catalyst, when momentum shifted. In the complex journey of any major legislative effort, there often comes a moment, sometimes unforeseen, that acts as a catalyst, shifting the momentum in a decisive way. For the Empowerment and Opportunity Act, this tipping point arrived not from a clever political maneuver or a high-profile endorsement, though those played their parts. It came from an unexpected source, a series of widely publicized factory closures in a region previously thought to be economically stable. Thousands of skilled, hard-working individuals suddenly found themselves jobless, their specialized skills no longer in demand. These closures brought the abstract arguments surrounding the bill into sharp human focus. News reports featured interviews with displaced workers, many in their late 40s and 50s, expressing fear and uncertainty about their futures. They spoke of mortgages, of children's education, of a lifetime spent honing skills that were now obsolete. Their plight resonated across the country, creating a wave of empathy and a dawning realization that what happened to them could happen to anyone in an era of rapid technological change. Suddenly, the need for a robust system of retraining and lifelong learning felt urgent and personal. This unfortunate economic event inadvertently became the bill's most powerful advocate. Op-eds began appearing in national newspapers, arguing that the Empowerment and Opportunity Act was not just a good idea, but a necessary one, a vital piece of infrastructure for the 21st century economy. Previously skeptical politicians, hearing from constituents directly impacted or deeply concerned by the closures, began to reconsider their positions. The abstract debate about costs and benefits was overshadowed by the tangible human cost of inaction, making the investment seem far more reasonable and pressing. The bill's proponents, while saddened by the circumstances, recognized the shift. They amplified the stories of the displaced workers, with their consent, of course, using them to illustrate exactly why the bill was so crucial. They pointed out how the proposed personalized learning pathways and access to foundational skills could offer these individuals a lifeline, a chance to retool and re-enter the workforce with renewed confidence. This unforeseen catalyst cut through the political noise, creating a groundswell of public and political will that proved instrumental in overcoming the remaining legislative hurdles. Section 7. A dawn of possibility, the bill becomes law. After months, even years of relentless effort, debate and countless revisions, the day finally arrived. The Empowerment and Opportunity Act faced its final votes in the legislative chambers. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Supporters who had poured their hearts and souls into this endeavor gathered in galleries and watched anxiously from home. The journey had been arduous, marked by setbacks and moments of doubt, but also by incredible perseverance and a growing sense of shared purpose. The fate of the bill and the hopes of millions it represented hung in the balance. The voting process itself was dramatic. As the tallies came in, a wave of emotion swept through the chambers. When the final count confirmed its passage by a significant margin, a mixture of cheers, applause, and even some tears erupted. It was a victory not just for the politicians who had championed it, but for the educators, the community leaders, the grassroots activists, and the ordinary citizens who had believed in its vision. It was a testament to the power of a compelling idea to unite disparate groups and overcome entrenched opposition for the common good. The signing ceremony was a momentous occasion. The nation's leader, pen in hand, spoke of the bill not merely as a piece of legislation, but as a promise of opportunity, of resilience, and of a future where every citizen had the tools to adapt and succeed. The pen used to sign the bill into law became a symbol of this new beginning, a tangible representation of a policy designed to unlock human potential on a grand scale. For those who had been involved from the very beginning, it was a deeply emotional and validating moment, the culmination of an extraordinary collective effort. With the bill's passage, a new dawn of possibility emerged. The focus now shifted from advocacy to implementation, from fighting for the law to making it work effectively for everyone. There was a sense of profound relief, but also a keen awareness of the responsibility that came with this victory. The Empowerment and Opportunity Act was no longer just a dream or a blueprint, it was the law of the land, poised to reshape lives and communities. The real work of transformation was just beginning, but the foundation had been beautifully and firmly laid. Section 8, the beautiful unfolding early ripples of change. The true beauty of the Empowerment and Opportunity Act was never meant to reside solely in its well-crafted clauses or its successful passage. Its real elegance, its profound impact would be seen in its unfolding, in the tangible changes it began to foster in the lives of individuals and communities across the nation. In the months following its enactment, the first pilot programs launched, and the initial results were nothing short of inspiring. People who had long felt stuck or overlooked began to find new pathways opening up before their very eyes. We saw individuals like Maria, a former retail worker who, through a free digital literacy program offered under the Act, discovered a passion for coding and is now an apprentice software developer. Or consider James, a factory worker in his 50s whose plant downsized. He accessed vocational retraining in green energy technologies and found a new, more secure career. These weren't isolated anecdotes, they were the leading edge of a much larger wave of personal transformation, multiplied across countless towns and cities, each story a testament to renewed hope. The beautiful aspect of the bill was its quiet empowerment. It wasn't about handouts, it was about offering a hand up. It fostered a sense of agency, allowing people to take control of their learning and career trajectories. Community learning centers, revitalized by funding and support from the Act, became vibrant hubs of activity. Neighbors learned alongside neighbors, sharing experiences and building support networks. Small businesses also began to benefit, reporting an easier time, finding applicants with the foundational skills they needed, leading to increased productivity and local economic growth. The early ripples of change demonstrated the bill's thoughtful design. The emphasis on personalized pathways meant that individuals were not forced into generic programs. but could pursue training relevant to their aspirations and local job markets. The provision of wraparound services like childcare assistance and transport stipends removed significant barriers that had previously prevented many from accessing further education or training. This holistic approach was what made the Act more than just a policy. It was a system designed for human flourishing, and its initial impact was a compelling preview of its long-term promise. Section 9, More Than a Law, a beacon for what's next. The Empowerment and Opportunity Act, as its positive effects continued to ripple outward, became recognized as more than just a successful piece of legislation. It evolved into a symbol, a beacon demonstrating what is possible when a society collectively decides to invest in its people. Its journey, from a whispered idea to a transformative national policy, offered a powerful lesson in perseverance, collaboration, and the enduring potential for positive change. The bill's success inspired a renewed sense of optimism about tackling other complex societal challenges with similar ambition and human-centered design. One of the most significant long-term implications was the cultural shift it fostered towards lifelong learning. The idea that education ends with formal schooling began to fade, replaced by an understanding that continuous skill development is essential in a dynamic world. Employers started to integrate the Act's resources into their own employee development programs, fostering a more adaptable and innovative workforce. This, in turn, began to attract new industries seeking a highly skilled talent pool, creating a virtuous cycle of economic development and opportunity for all involved. The beauty of the Act, in its broadest sense, was its fundamental belief in human potential. It operated on the premise that everyone, given the right tools and opportunities, can learn, grow, and contribute. This optimistic view of human nature was woven into its very fabric and was reflected in the positive outcomes it generated. It served as a counter-narrative to cynicism and division, proving that policies rooted in empathy and foresight can yield extraordinary results. The story of the bill became a case study in effective governance and social innovation for other nations to consider. Looking ahead, the legacy of the Empowerment and Opportunity Act is not just in the millions of lives it directly touches, but in the inspiration it provides for future generations of policymakers, activists, and citizens. It stands as a reminder that bold, beautiful ideas, when pursued with courage and collaboration, can indeed reshape the world for the better. It challenges us to ask, what other seemingly intractable problems can be solved if we approach them with the same spirit of innovation, the same commitment to equity, and the same unwavering belief in the power of collective action? The Act was a game changer, lighting the way forward.